Andrea, thanks very much for joining us again.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you since we last spoke?
Okay, things moving fast. Trying to make sure I juggle the staff and making sure the staff are in the office or not in the office, and flexible working seems to be the name of the game at the moment.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, fast makes sense because payments at the moment, not only is it such a fast-moving industry anyway, but payments and gaming, we just heard so much about it in the last sort of few weeks and months, and obviously the last couple of years as well. Today, we're going to speak about kind of local payments, the evolution of a local payment, and why does it matter. And to start off with, it'd be great if actually you could just talk us through in a very basic instinct. That's a film, instant. What are local payments exactly?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because it depends who you are and you're trying to think. But in our industry context is what I'm going to do, because a local payment is something I can use anywhere. So it could be a bank and it could be my debit card. But from our industry perspective, it's a local payment is one of those alternative payment methods. Historically, anything that's not a bank payment or a MasterCard, Visa card payment has always been classed as alternative payment methods, APMs, in our industry. But within that are local ones, which are very unique as a rule and reach local communities and have a different reason for wanting to use it. And you can go from different extremes in different country formats. So you can have in various countries in LATAM countries, specific brands that have been around for a long time and been able to be used. And that's a loyalty of a local person in that country, like Boleto in Brazil. The customer knows, I know how I'm doing that. That's how I'm going to use. That's where I go. Whereas it could be a wallet. In Africa, everybody thinks that everybody's got a wallet in Africa. They've all got smartphones. They don't all have the wallets, but they all have access to it through other people. That's a local payment method because they're used to it and it's what they have. But even in countries like the UK and other countries across Europe, there are local payment routes that is important to people because they want to make sure it's safe. They don't want to use their bank because they want to stay secure. They want to stay private too, for various reasons. And so a local payment fits outside of your mainstream and is very critical to the player. And by definition, my local payment is about what I do and how I use my payments. And I have a number of them personally. So I'm in the UK and I've got a number of bank accounts, and my Monzo card I use for certain things. And I use my Starling for others. And these are new challenger banks, but I also have my old fashioned one that I set up when I was a student. But I have preferences, and that's mainstream, nothing to do with gambling. Local payments is about understanding your local player and being able to get a conversion. And that's absolutely critical. So that's a conversation we're talking about. And there are masses of them, absolutely masses of them all over the place. For context, though, I'm not going to talk about crypto, if that's okay. It's a totally different ball game. Very positive about it, but it will add a complexity. So I'm not bringing that into this at this point.
Absolutely. Can you explain kind of the point and the main benefit of a local payment against others? And I don't know how far off I am here, but I'm reminded of HSBC's old advert where they said, we want to be your local bank.
Yeah, I mean, they are a local bank because they're international. And actually, I mean, I'm at NeoSurf in a lot of ways. We're a local payment, but our headquarters are in France. The answer is that the local player gets it, understands it, can use it. In the gambling arena, they tend to have a safety and security and privacy level. That's why people will use NeoSurf or PaySafe card, or there's more now with Jens with cash to code and much better. There was a whole lot of different areas. But local is about making sure that the local customer player understands it. And again, I'm moving away from the bank in the mainstream. In our context in gambling, these are the local African wallets. It's the Boleto in Brazil. It's, for example, for us, it's NeoSurf in the shops. So NeoSurf reaches the customer in their local kiosk or shop or supermarket, as does our competitors, PaySafe and etc. But the principle being that customer has a different way of collecting their money. Some of them can only do it that way. They can only do it that way because their access to banking isn't as easy. Whereas others, they've easily got access to banking, but the privacy is the number one thing, and security. These are things that we've always talked about. And I've been in many trade shows, and I'm sitting here thinking, Christ, it was back in 2007 when I joined UCash originally. And we were all trying to convince people to understand that they needed to have them. I think the industry knows that they need them. The problem is how to use them. And the problem is, how do I, as an operator or a PSP, make sure I've got the right ones in the right place at the right price, and I'm controlling everything? And oh my God, it's so complicated. Do you know what? I'm just going to have one in each country. And it's the thinking thought process of actually, you've got to go the other way around. So actually something that HSBC promoted, and is a good point, refers to us in here. If you don't understand what the players need and want and how they want to be, and HSBC have local people in local countries to deal with stuff, then you won't necessarily understand how to convert the majority. And sometimes, sadly, you do need quite a lot of these local payments to give access to those players. But you don't actually have to have 150 integrations per country. There are ways around that, and I can talk to that. But yeah, sure. It's turn it the other way around. Too many times I sit and listen to panels or read commentary about, oh, there's just too much. We can't deal with too much. Don't need too much. Mm-hmm. But don't miss a trick. Got to keep your eye on it. It's part of the model.
Yeah. Just how important are local payments for gaming customers typically? And I'm guessing you're going to say very important, otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation. But to follow up on that a little bit, are there any markets where customers or kind of regulators or companies are not as big on local payments as others? Or is it kind of universally you need it every market?
No, it is true. Let's take the UK, because I might touch on the Netherlands as well, because that's a bit of a hot topic at the moment. Yeah. So let's take the UK first. Is that I was listening to BBC Radio 4 and the Gambling Commission were talking about in the UK that our life would be so much easier if we just had debit cards. And then the fraud rules and the vulnerability rules and all of those things can be all controlled, and we just do it with the banks. And the Radio 4 guy that was interviewing basically said, but that doesn't work, does it? Because some people don't want their bank cards on there. And they got into that conversation of, no, people want security. Be it that the husband's hiding betting on the horses from the wife, and the wife's hiding bingo from the husband. And we know all those stories. There's also, and I've worked in lending, if you bet on 3 horse races in across maybe 6 weeks, you might not get a loan or a mortgage. The world doesn't understand gambling, and therefore the player, again, you go upside down and turn back into the player's needs of what they want to do. So even in the UK, there is a marketplace for what we're calling local payment, but it's literally their local alternative payment. Take the Netherlands, interesting place at the moment. They've done the same as France. They forgot about vouchers, not because they misplaced the information. It's just that it's knowledge base, etc. So it's interesting that some payment methods and local payment methods are neither allowed or disallowed. It's a very, very interesting place. I have spent the last 2 weeks unraveling a whole load of stuff with operators for the Netherlands. These things will constantly happen, but at the end of the day, a local payment is important if the player finds it important. And it doesn't have to be an unbanked country. It doesn't have to be a developing country, although they're bigger there. You need to serve the player. And they can be an important part of the overall mix. And sometimes they'll use different versions. They might use more than one. So you've got to have it. It's a question of how much and how the hell do I know what to have in each of the country. That's where I believe payments companies have to be working with the operator to bring knowledge together. And there's some interoperability technically that can work. A word I never thought I'd ever get around to using. I learned way back at the beginning of this century or last century. I'm not that old. But the whole principle of making it simpler both for the player and the operator is important, which I can talk to. The thing is, we all need to start to think about that player and what it is the player needs, and am I now serving the needs of that player? And can they then access what they need from a payment? Because at the end of the day, if you do all that, it's called conversion. And just think, oh no, it's okay in this country. Yeah, there's some wallets in that country. Well, listen, we'll take these 3. They look like they're the top ones and we'll be fine. Oh, hold on a minute. You find out next year, oh, well, the region says that we should have had that wallet. Why did we have that? Got to get it right. You've got to think about it, and you've got to need local expertise to do that. Because it's good old-fashioned consumer knowledge. That's what it's about.
What's changing most in this area? And perhaps a better word is what's evolving most in this area?
2 key things are evolving. One, in higher regulated markets, misinterpretation of payment methods are being restrictive to the operators, and that can do 2 things. That can close out the good licensed operators from getting customers, and sadly throw some of the players in those countries underground to unlicensed, illegal, unlooked after, and the vulnerability issue disappears because you've now not got the balance right of the 2 things. And that takes a lot of work. And the thing is, I understand it, because you've got to get regulation right, but I do believe the regulators and us in payments don't get enough to connect enough, or you'll get one player in who may go in and try and do it at the pushing out of everything else. That's not appropriate either. I'm not accusing stuff there. It's just that a collaborative approach somehow we've got to get. But more positively, far more positively, is this interoperability word. I never used to be able to say it when I was first introduced to this word, and I'll use it as an example. And it's not just your PSPs. So the PSP have always done an interoperability of various payment methods and provide an operator with, you've got this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. But there are so many that often the salesperson or the account manager doesn't know all the details of all individual payments. When it gets down to the lower level of that local payment and knowledge, you've got to really understand it. That's what I was saying before. But being able to bring, and I'm going to use a NeoSurf example if I may, because I can talk to it and it's our product, is if I look across Africa, and I look across the Western Africa mostly, in 38 countries, there are 72 wallets. Those 72 wallets are regulated by the banks, but the customer, the player locally, can buy a NeoSurf voucher safely, securely, and then use that where NeoSurf is at. And the user experience is simplified, but not reduced in a regulatory manner. But all the data is collected, and the data is collected for help with fraud, which can be a high risk in some of the African countries, especially some of the Western African countries. So one of the things about interoperability is collecting and being able to simplify it to the good customers, be in control of the data, and fundamentally making those decisions easier for the operator to make. Because they might say, well, do I need all 72? Well, what countries do you see as being right for you? This one, this one, and this one. Okay, that's 5 wallets because it's this and it's that, and that's what the business is. And being transparent and sharing the information. I think far too often they go, well, you can have this one or this one. This looks like it's the number one. And then making less informed decisions. The payments industry, creating that interoperability with other payments, with knowledge, and helping the whole process with the operator is what's going to work. And at the end of the day, it's AI, artificial intelligence, bringing the physical payment world into the digital world, not just so I can spend online, but I can see what's going on and look at patterns. And I mean, we're about to launch across, I think it's 8 countries in LATAM next year. And there's over 40 payment options that we're working with that we'll be providing, like those 72 wallets. But you've got to, we felt that we had to know how that works. Who are the customers? How will I explain that to an operator? Payments industry is international, but don't just deal with the basics. Make sure you understand it. Technically, data, interoperability, and AI, look at all those words. It's wonderful, isn't it? Knowing what it's about, who the player is, how does the operation work, collecting the data for fraud, and allowing best conversions. Means putting some effort in. Don't make assumptions. Don't make assumptions, everyone. Worst thing you could do.
Yeah, so you mentioned AI, and kind of AI is not only are we writing a lot about it at the moment, it's just a daily topic of conversation in the office. It just comes up all the time. But you mentioned fraud as well, and kind of more specifically, when it comes to local payments, how can local payments ensure operators feel secure when it comes to regulatory controls and issues like fraud and other things?
I do think that's connections with the right people who can bring it in. So working with maybe our company, the correct PSPs, etc., who actually can collect that right information. So if it is a physical voucher being purchased and it's being delivered with a digital platform, making sure that the digital platform is sharing the right information with the right people. There's a lot of information out there, and everybody's, yeah, I've got my AI and I know what I'm doing and I know where that's at, but it's a bit more, another word that I keep hearing more and more recently is, oh, transparency. Transparency is a lovely word. It's a bit like interoperability if you mean it and you execute on it. And that I find absolutely vital. We've been working recently with a couple of our PSP partners for operators. So you've got a multiple of local payments. We've got us bringing that through. You've got the PSP and you've got the operator who's got many brands. And with all the mergers and acquisitions, it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. Transparency is working together. No blame. Doesn't matter. Is it your fault or is it whose fault? Doesn't matter. Get it information right. And I'm finding that beginning to get better and stronger. And smart relationship management of using that AI to the right purpose. We can all collect data. We can all get business analysts that can give us, it's this way or that pattern's showing. And there's a lot of stuff across gambling, not just payments. But at the end of the day, the payments area does have a massive risk of fraud and terrorism. And so transparency of your data and working together is absolutely vital. And if the payments businesses need, more and more of us need to stop sitting backwards and going, oh, that's theirs. They've got to deal with that, not us. It's not us. Let us know if it's us. That kind of approach has got to change.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing it. I'm seeing that beneficial. I'm seeing it happen. So a local payment has to be able to connect into that AI. And has to have a relationship. I call, I shouldn't say I, Mark Churnside, who created this phrase, UCash CEO at the time, our vouchers are traceable cash. And in those days, it was, I can't even remember, it was about £200 worth of anonymous vouchers, a lot less now. But the whole idea is that you've got to be able to trace the payments. Great, but work together. Be transparent and really do it. Local payments don't need to be underground. Local payments serve the player, but getting the data together means that we can all do it. And ease the burden amongst us is what's really important. Sorry, I've been on my soapbox on that one.
That's all right. You mentioned what needs to change, and that was one thing. But we've talked about the importance and the benefits of local payments. What else needs to change that will help operators when it comes to local payments?
Two things for me: simplicity and simplicity. Simplicity for the operator. Help them make the choices, informed choices, not just pitching a sales pitch, and allowing that choice method to be based on real information and supportive ability to manage the fraud, to manage conversions, etc. But the other one is, of course, is simplicity for the player, for the consumer. So those two user journeys. Gambling operators are absolutely top class at user experience for the games or the betting, whatever it is that they're doing. Payments industry have been notoriously awful in the gambling sector. We learned that and had to really work hard, and we've worked at a really, we took payments in gambling expertise to understand how to make our user experience, and I hated it. When I was first shown it, I was like, yo, that doesn't work. That looks awful. Very subjective view of one. And I love being wrong for the right reason, and that has been, and we've got a great situation. The player has to be able to do what they want to do swiftly and cleanly, and that comes with simplicity. Don't overcook it. Don't make them look for things. There are some amazing user experience people out there with this area. Payments companies have to get up to that level of making sure that user experience is right, and then making those decisions. Now, I remember our good friend Richard Connolly, who's no longer at PokerStars, but he used to talk about every single payment method that came in, they would actually look at. They wouldn't take everything, but they'd look at it in case they weren't missing anything. And then he set some basic criteria about, out of all of the ones we need per country, we'll have no more than 2. So he set some criteria for it. And it had a lot of legs in that, because he at least set an expectation for people of what they needed to bring in. The world's changing a little bit in that you're bringing different players in, be it like an esports player to gamble, or gambling going into esports, and there's some different worlds around there. But it doesn't really matter how many. It matters on knowing which ones, and when the player wants to use it, that the user experience is smart. And I've too many people say, oh yeah, our user experience really simple, subjective views. Test it, then test it again, and then update it and test it again, like the operators do with their brilliant user experiences. They know how to get somebody through the game. Payments business help the operators to convert better by having that user experience at the heart of it. And it's I think that really is very important. Players and operators, simplicity.
Absolutely.
I have been on my soapbox today, sorry.
No, that's absolutely fine. I've got one more question for you, because I think we've covered a lot of ground, but I think it'd be helpful maybe to, I'm not sure if it visualizes the right term, but to kind of sum up what you're saying, perhaps in a scenario form. So to finish, we've got a scenario for you, a gaming operator that doesn't bother with local payments at all. One that just says, we don't need to localize payments, versus another one who embraces kind of every kind of local payment it can in every different market it can. Long term, what do you see as the end results for these 2 different companies?
So if you've got an operator that just says, no, I'm going to limit it, and the limitation means you're just not going to have certain customer profiles within the country of choice, you're going to end up actually leaving a pocket of profit on the floor. Somebody else will have it, don't worry about it if you don't want it, and you may make that decision. And sometimes you make that decision in countries like a lot of the European countries. There are a number of people who don't add PaySafe or NeoSurf onto the UK sites. I'm fine. Fine, if you want to take it, that's absolutely fine, because we can be just a small percentage, but it's how important that is. Mm-hmm. Whereas the people who do take it in, I think, add that little piece of extra magic as well, and that's word of mouth. So if you've got the right mix, you've got the local community understanding that. And it depends, what is that community? Is that community a group of Sunday football players talking about what they did with their betting on the football game? Or is it a community in a village in Kenya talking? Is it in the US talking about where they're going to be going, what they're doing? I found this is the best one. Oh, that's the one I found that pays out quicker. If I use this, I get this much quicker. And so people do talk. And so if you leave it out and go, no, I'm just going to go with the minimum, you're going a little bit blind. And I've seen operators that have done that, and they go, I'm fine. Okay. And personally, I see that reaching out in the same way as they look after their customers, because they're not thinking about the player first. Where the ones that do, you've got some that go overboard and got loads. And I get that, they're trying to do everything.
Yeah.
But the ones that get it right, not only do they get loyalty and sticking and better conversion, but when they start to do promotions, that seems to work even better. And then, so it keeps going, and keeps going, and keeps going. So having that and constantly looking at the right thing means you're looking after your players. And fundamentally, at the end of the day, they're the ones that count.
Yeah.
The operators, players, that's where profit comes from. So think about them. Even the little small 5%, is that going to be worthwhile? Well, actually, it can offer a better mix. And sometimes somebody will use this payment and that payment. And by giving the two choices, it helps. Decisions, there's payments, people have to help them. But don't cut it off, because the old phrase, don't cut your nose off to spite your own face, I think was the phrase, or something like that.
Yeah.
You've got to, it's about your players.
Yeah.
Give them a good way to deposit and convert, and give them a good way to get their payouts. And you've got a player for life.
Mm-hmm.
It's the basics.
Yeah, winning combination there. Andrea, thanks very much for your answers and for your analysis. Beneficial to learn about local payments, and I'm sure our viewers will say the same.
Okay, I hope it helps. It's very opinionated, but I think it's the point. We need more opinions. So thanks very much, Tim.
Cheers. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.